Ms. Jacobs and myself are here.
I don't think so yet, Charlie.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully in a minute or two. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So we're now live streaming on YouTube. So just so everyone knows.
And I'm going to go to share screen to our presentation. And now I'm going to put this on full screen. Okay. Everybody can see that, and you can see my cursor move around. Cool.
Yes.
I just text a couple of commission members to see if they're close. Ms. Lepus, I think, is on with us now. So I think we're one short. Harrison is trying to get on with her internet now, so hopefully just be another minute or two before we have a call. Okay, so Ms. Harrison is with us. Christopher, I count 5. Ms. Hossain and I, Ms. Jacobs, Ms. Lepis, and Ms. Harrison. Is that correct?
Correct. That's what I see.
Okay, so we do have a quorum, so I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the September 15th, 2021 meeting of the City of Charleston Planning Commission meeting. My name is Charlie Carish. I'm the chairman. Since we're meeting via Zoom, I'm going to, for the record, read the commission members that are with us today. Mr. Harry Lassane is the vice chairman. Ms. Sunday Lepis, Ms. Erica Harrison, and Ms. Donna Jacobs. So I think there'll be some others that'll be joining us. Those are the ones here right now. I expect Angie Johnson to be with us, and I know for sure maybe Ms. Bryant Jenkins. Just for the record, we're volunteers who are appointed by Charleston City Council, and I appreciate the work of all the commission members as always. I would like to take a special thank you to Mayor Tecklenburg and the staff for scheduling this meeting at 2. I had a couple of calls from people saying, why would you meeting at 2? And it starts at sundown tonight, the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur. And it was very kind of the mayor to say, Charlie, I want you to be able to go to services tonight. If you start at 5, maybe if it runs a little late, you may not be able to make it. So I appreciate the city doing that, and I appreciate staff and the commission members accommodating this and all the applicants as well. I think the real reason I think Mr. Morgan and the Mayor Tecklenburg want me to go to synagogue to repent for all my sins. So I'll be there on time and I'll do that. But anyway, the way this meeting was conducted is I'll read an item from the agenda into the record, and then we'll ask staff to do a presentation. After that, we'll ask the applicant to say whatever they'd like to say. And then we'll ask anybody in favor of the application, anyone in opposition to the application. Then we'll give the applicant a right to answer any questions that came up as part of the process. After that, we'll close the public aspect of this, and commission members will discuss, make motions, and vote on. I'm going to ask, I think I did everything. Mr. Morgan, I'm going to ask you to introduce any of your staff that will be presenting today and let us know if there's any changes to the agenda.
Sure. Well, on the meeting today is myself, Christopher Morgan. I'm planning manager here in the Department of Planning, Preservation, and Sustainability. Also presenting cases will be Anna Harp, our senior zoning planner. Lee Batchelder will be presenting materials. He's our zoning administrator. Helping make this meeting run today is Philip Overcash, our senior planner. Chloe Stuber may chime in too. She's on a conflicting meeting right now. Marcy Grant is our clerk too. And so that is our staff for today.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I know on the top of the agenda, we have the minutes up. What I'd like to do is, because there's not a lot of commission members, take that at the end of the meeting. Or if you'll just remind me if I forget it, I'd appreciate it. So we'll go into those minutes and approve the minutes at the end of the meeting. We'll go right into the rezonings. So number 1 on the rezonings is Jack. I'm sorry. Is that good?
Yes, sir.
Number 1 on the rezone, Jack Primus Road, Wando Cainhoy, TMS number 268. And there's a number zeros that have my reading glasses, 00000091, I believe. 134 and a portion 133, approximately 81.57 acres. Request rezoning from diverse residential DR1 to light industrial L1. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this property you all have seen a number of times, those of you who've been on the commission for a few years. First, it was rezoned from light industrial to the DR1 probably 4 or 5 years ago. And then it went through a subdivision concept plan. But now there is a new plan for the property, and we'll kind of go over that today. It is an 81 acre tract, as the chairman said. And the request is to rezone from the DR1 back to the light industrial that it had in the past. And it is surrounded on 2 to 3 sides by light industrial. As you see on this map here, subject properties in tan, and the light industrial is shown in the reddish color. And you see the Gildan warehouse, which is over here at the corner of Jack Primus and Clements Ferry. You see the Charleston Regional Business Park, which surrounds on a couple of sides over here. It's light industrial. And then all to the rear is the Jack Primus settlement area that is actually in Berkeley County. It was identified as one of our settlement areas in our new comprehensive plan. So obviously we want to be very sensitive to how things relate to the settlement area that is adjacent. I'm going to go through some other slides that give you a better sense of what is on this property at present. It is in our current plan because the council has not yet had the final readings on our new comprehensive plan. In our current Century 5 plan, it is designated as job center. So the light industrial zoning is right in line with that. And you see it here, and it does show that there is a good bit of wetland area here, and the site itself does have a good bit of wetlands. Here is an aerial image of the property, and you can see the Jack Primus community in the rear, the Gildan warehouse here, and some of the big warehouses of Charleston Regional over here. Again, access off of Jack Primus Road. The aerial here shows a little bit more view from Clements Ferry and the undeveloped areas out to the front. So we are supportive of this request, and I believe that the applicant has been in touch with folks in the Jack Primus area. Fred Lincoln, who we know well from the Jack Primus area, called me yesterday stating that group was in support of this rezoning. So I don't know if Fred is, I don't think I saw that he had signed up to speak, but he did relay that to me and asked me to relay it to the commission. But with that, we're recommending for approval on this request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Morgan. And I think we have for the applicant, Troy Miller to speak. Is that correct, Philip?
That's right.
Okay, Mr. Miller, whenever you're ready, we're ready for you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'll just give you a quick, brief history of this project and where we're at, and the reason for our request to return to light industrial zoning. This project was originally, when purchased, all light industrial zoning. Around 5 or 6 years ago, I believe there was an interested party in purchasing the parcel that has now been zoned DR1. They did not proceed to closing and to purchase. And so for the last 4 or 5 years, we as the owners have been working with various groups who had an interest in pursuing it as DR1 and zoning and developing residential on this site. As I have worked with those groups and moved forward, we have found it progressively more difficult to really make this work as residential, and feel like we have a much better user and a more suitable user for this site that, as Mr. Morgan mentioned, does have some significant wetland on it, to go back to a light industrial user. And we have someone in mind to do so, that this property would more suitably be usable for that use. So that is our reason to kind of try to return this to what it originally was, make it a little more cohesive with its surroundings, with the Charleston Industrial Park. And as Mr. Morgan mentioned, I have been in touch with Mr. Lincoln from the neighborhood to the north, as well as with elected officials for this area, to kind of talk through this process with them. And I think that what we are considering here will be a help to the existing area, and a use that will actually fit better on the property, given its restraints from a wetland perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I appreciate your time today. There's no one else signed up to speak in favor or opposed to this application, so we'll close the public aspect of this. But Mr. Miller, we appreciate you talking to Mr. Lincoln and some of the others. That makes a lot of difference, so thank you. That closes the public aspect of this. Commission members, questions, comments, or a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jacobs, you go ahead.
Thank you. I'm very encouraged that you took the time to speak with the Jack Primus community, because during our city plan, we put a lot of effort into settlement communities and respect with land development around that. So this is very encouraging that you've reached out to the community, and I hope as you move forward with this potential buyer that you will continue to work with the community in any sort of, since it's light industrial, with any buffering with noise and obstructions and stuff like that. So with that preamble, I'd like to make a motion to approve this rezoning.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Other comments, questions, or second of the motion?
I'll second Ms. Jacobs' motion.
Thank you, Ms. Lampasas. This is a motion by Ms. Jacobs, seconded by Ms. Lampasas. If there's no other comments, we'll do a roll call vote. I'm going to go through the names, and if some people may be signed on, I'll go the names. If I don't hear anything, I'll assume they're not with us. Mr. Jimmy Bailey, Ms. Laquita Bryant Jenkins, Ms. Erica Harrison. Ms. Harrison?
I saw her on the lineup.
Yeah. Ms. Harrison, can you hear us?
She's on, Charlie, and her microphone is not showing muted either.
Huh.
Let me see if.
Aye.
Oh,
There we go.
great. Thank you, Ms. Harrison. You in favor? I think I heard an aye, correct?
Yeah.
Did a thumbs up.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Ms. Johnson, are you with us? No, you could be on and off. Okay. Ms. Lempesis?
Aye.
Great. Ms. Jacobs again?
I in favor.
Mr. Lassane?
Aye, in favor.
Great, and I'm in favor as well. Mr. Flug is not with us today, so that's 5 in favor, none opposed. So that application passes. Number 2 on the rezonings is 25, 31, 34 Wolf Street, Canterbury, Elliott Borough, Peninsula TMS number 4590, 901, 053, 4601, 201, 202, 001, and 4600, 804, 064, approximately 0.82 acres. Request rezoning from light industrial LI to plan unit development PUD. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. So these are parcels. They're some of the last remaining light industrial parcels in the kind of Upper King, Upper Meeting area. As you all who know some of the history of Charleston might know, this was an area of town that had some quasi-industrial uses on it, including some of these parcels that included a butcher shop, a fairly extensive butcher operation here, and the applicants can give you a little bit more history on that, but some of that went on in buildings here, including the old Wolf Street Playhouse, which is on this property, and that was a use that was in this building for a number of years. I believe it is now closed, but this is of course a historic building on this site, and then there are vacant properties to the south in the area that is part of the PUD. And the interest in the PUD relates to not only, the future uses would be here, but also working together with the city to come up with a path forward to create area for the low line, because we're trying to create the corridor for the low line. In a lot of areas, we have the old rail right of way that comes through here that's already owned, but then there are other areas where we don't have that rail right of way, and we've had to work out easements, et cetera. For instance, there's an easement with the student housing development to the north that's right here under the MU1 workforce housing. Sky Garden is its common name, and there's an easement through there 10 or 15 feet that goes right next to the Medden Wolf Street Playhouse building, and with this PUD there's the anticipation that corridor would continue down here because of dedication via this PUD and also dedication via some surrounding property owners. So hopefully this allows for the low line to continue on through this area. This PUD has also been put together in light of this area being part of our urban core, or in our future plan, our city center area. So all the uses are very much in keeping with those types of uses, and I'll kind of go into that a little bit further. This is an image that shows the this is the height district, and of course this is all already the existing 8-story height district, and they are not asking for a change in the height district. It's existing 8-story height district and has been since we reworked our height districts a number of years ago. This is the overall image showing the accommodation zoning, and of course these are already in the accommodation zone, and you see the surrounding accommodations zoning here in the pinkish reddish color. And then we have an image here just to give you a sense that this is definitely taken off as an accommodation zone, because these are a number of different hotels in the area that have either recent approvals or have already been built. Some of the ones you all may know well, the Hyatt is here. There's a approved hotel for the School of Law, former Corps of Engineers property here. There's an existing Holiday Inn here. There's an existing, I forget the name of this hotel at the corner of Meeting and Reed, but that's an existing hotel. There's a new hotel that Michael Bennett is working on in this location. There are hotels that are entitled at the Joseph, the Mars Sokol properties. There's another entitled hotel, 50 rooms at the old Dixie Furniture, and a couple other smaller ones along King Street. So clearly a hotbed of hotel activity, and we'll kind of discuss how the PUD looks at hotels as well. In the Century 5 plan, a current plan, of course, it is urban core. So that's the most intense types of uses, the greatest density, all that. In the PUD, what they're proposing is the PUD would have this mixed use area essentially for the whole of the PUD that would allow for a whole range of uses from housing to offices to accommodations uses. And they would also dedicate a 10-foot swath, which given the size of these properties is a fairly significant piece of this property on the south of Wolf Street. They would dedicate that 10-foot swath for use for the low line in that zone. And so these are the land use plans from the PUD. This is an aerial image of the surrounding properties. Again, the Sky Garden, which is an 8-story student housing development here, the new hotels that are over here, parking lots to the south, parking lots to the west that are part of the Sokol property. And then, of course, the Wolf Street building that is the old Medin warehouse as well there. Here's a little bit more of a blow up here showing the current uses on the property. And let's see if I can get this thing to advance. Here we go. Oblique image, just giving you a sense again. You all probably recognize the structure of the Medin warehouse. And here is a street view for that. You can also see here on the right side, the eastern side, there is an easement for the low line that comes through here. It's fairly narrow. It's not going to be as wide as we'll get on the southern end. So that's a huge benefit the city is getting from having this PUD come forward, is getting a little bit wider area for the low line through that zone. And here is an image of the current property with parking area on it at present and the hotels in the background. And then we have the content from the applicant, which relates to the PUD here. And we have had some discussions since you all got the packages, and the PUD has been updated by the applicant. And I'll kind of show you the updated pages in here too. And this is a copy of the PUD cover that you all have in your packages that you were sent. And I'm just going to kind of zip through this. It talks about the mixture of uses, that there are allowances for housing for up to 150 residential units, a hotel for up to 250 units, or office uses and retail uses also as allowed. And then we have worked with the applicant, and I'll kind of explain this accommodations changes here. One of the city's interests here is that if there were going to be another hotel, we would like to have this hotel be a full service hotel as defined in our accommodations overlay. And the full service hotels are limited to a box kind of from Line Street to the north to Hudson Street to the south and kind of between King and Meeting. And this would be, should it be built, the 8th and final full service hotel in that area. And that requires a number of things, such as having 20,000 square feet or more of meeting, conference, banquet space, of which 15,000 square feet is contiguous on site. And this is language that is in the existing accommodations overlay. And we were just very interested that in this location, that if there were going to be a hotel of significant size, that it be one that meets the criteria for this full service hotel. And the applicants were willing to agree to that. And we've put that in as a suggested condition that I'll get to in just a minute. I'll let Mr. Hellman, who is going to be speaking for the applicants, go into any other detail he wants to on this. But those were the main changes to the PUD document from what you got in your packages. And then we do have an image change here that is just so you see that now, of course, with the land use plan, they are showing that the 10-foot zone would be there on the western side of the parcel that is south of Wolf Street. This is Wolf Street. The Medin warehouse is here. the vacant parcels are here, and this would be the 10-foot zone for the low line in that location there. And then they've got all their other letters of coordination. I'll just sit through these. Those are very standard. So we are recommending for approval on this with the criteria and the conditions that we would suggest, that the hotel use meet the criteria for a full service hotel as outlined in the accommodations ordinance, that the use of the meeting or event space across Wolf Street for the hotel requires construction of a mid-block crossing as per council adopted low line design standards. So what that's relating to is, I should have had these pictures right next to one another, but essentially if you've got a hotel on this site and you're using some of this Medin building that could serve well for conference space, meeting space, things like that, because again, it was turned into a playhouse, that you could do that. And what you would need to do is create a mid-block crossing here for the low line. Already the low line is here. This is an easement next to the Sky Garden. And it would just be, there's criteria in the new adopted City of Charleston design guidelines for the low line that City Council adopted that shows how to create a mid-block crossing in a situation like this that would cause cars to slow down for people going across the low line. And it's something that would help extend the low line, and it also would be convenient for those who might be staying in the hotel here and needing to use conference space across the street. So that is the genesis of that suggested condition. And then we have also just the pure dedication of the 10-foot area on the western side of the parcel on the south side of Wolf Street for the low line area. And with those suggested conditions, we are recommending for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I know we have, I think, Mr. Hellman with us, and Mr. Hellman will let you give your presentation, and hopefully you'll let us know if you understand the conditions, have any questions, or if you're okay with the conditions. And I think, Mr. Hellman, this is also not, the attorney, but this is your family property, and is that correct?
Chairman Karras, you are indeed correct. And in fact, with me, and he may not have been promoted, but Stuart Medin, my uncle, is here with me as well. And if Jim or Chloe or someone could promote him to a panelist as well. First, I typically appear before this board in an attorney capacity representing a client, but here with Stuart, this is our family's property. It's been in our family for almost 100 years. This was what you probably know is the Wolf Street Playhouse. Before it was the Playhouse, we had allowed Spoleto to use it from time to time. The College of Charleston used it as a warehouse. But we had used it. My grandfather and his brothers had a company called Medin Brothers. And Medin Brothers was a meat packing company in Georgia and South Carolina. My grandfather had the local location here. There was a little history in the PUD if you got a chance to see it. But basically, it supplied wholesale meat to most of the corner grocery stores when they existed around town. And that survived on and through the late 1970s or so when he retired. And so we call the place that everyone knows as the Theater of the Plant. About probably 4 or 5 years ago, Mayor Tecklenburg reached out to us and was talking about the low line and said, hey, we've got a problem. We really don't have rights to get anywhere past Wolf Street. How can you help? And we looked at ways to figure that out. And as you can see, our land to the south between Wolf and Reed is pretty narrow. And as we looked at it, the problem that it creates is really one of parking. And so we've spent a good bit of time meeting with planning staff, with Mr. Morgan, with Mr. Summerfield and his predecessor, Mr. Lindsay, Mr. Batchelder, as well as had sort of architects and engineers look at this. And really the purpose behind the PUD for this site is light industrial, as we know, is as Mr. Morgan pointed out and did a great job giving an overview of this. Light industrial doesn't really fit what's going on around here anymore. So we knew we needed to change the zoning, but if we were going to basically give, and it's about 12% or more of that land down there, to the city to push the low line, it was going to create some parking issues for us. So the best way we thought to move forward with that was going to be through a PUD. And then additionally, in working with staff, there were some other suggestions that came out of it, those conditions that Mr. Morgan went over. And Chairman Karrasch, we're on board with those conditions. We spent a good bit of time yesterday working with the city council, city's council, Julia Copeland, and Mr. Morgan and Mr. Batchelder hammering out some language that will address that. So we're on board with the conditions. We're happy to answer any questions you have, and we're really looking forward to this as this is something that's really in our long-term future and has been in our long-term past. So we're excited about this. We're excited to be able to work something out that'll benefit the city on this property, that'll benefit the low line. Some of you know, you can maybe see a bike in the back corner there. I bike to work from east of the Cooper. So there's a lot of personal excitement in this for me. So we're happy to answer any questions. Stuart, did you appear?
I am here. I got invited in. Thank you very much, Chloe and Chairman Karrasch. It's good to talk with you and the rest of the group this morning or this afternoon about this, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well that Brian doesn't cover.
Thank you, Mr. Bedden, and thank you, Mr. Hellman. I think, Mr. Bedden, a few years ago, I went with David Perlman to a Braves game with you, I believe. Is that correct?
Only if it was a Dodgers game.
That's exactly right. Anyway, we were rooting for opposite teams. But anyway, thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Hellman, for the history as well. I think there's only one other person signed up to speak, and that's Aaron Minigan from the Preservation Society of Charleston. Philip, are they ready?
Yeah, I've allowed Aaron to speak, so go for it.
Aaron, you go ahead whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Minigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. First, we would like to thank the applicant for reaching out and walking us through the request. We are grateful for the donation of land to the low line and understand that a PUD is the mechanism that will enable this transaction by giving the developer assurances that his vested rights will be protected as the development is contemplated in and around the historic Medin Brothers building. Moving forward, we are concerned with the excessive number of small-scale requests to rezone to PUD. While this submission meets the requirement of securing a public benefit, we urge the Commission to look upon future requests for PUD approval in such small land areas with skepticism to ensure the public that the integrity of our zoning will be upheld. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your input. I don't see anyone else signed up to speak in favor or against, and there's no written comments. That being the case, that'll close, unless Mr. Hellman or Mr. Medin would like to say anything else, that'll close the public aspect of this. And I'd ask commission members to ask any questions or make a motion.
Chairman?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to make a motion to approve this PUD, but I do have a few questions that I'd like to go through.
You go ahead.
One of the big questions I had, which is on page 6, 5.4, ownership and maintenance of the open space. The way it's written is the developer will own the land, and I understand that it may have a necessary stormwater use for them, but the maintenance of the land goes to the grantee of the rights to the low line. And since that hasn't really been determined who's owning the lowland, it seems nebulous until the low line is completed and properly granted to an individual, that maintenance of those granted right-of-ways is kind of literally up in the air. And I know it's a fine detail, and I'm sure they won't let the property go unmaintained, those little pieces of property, but it's just a matter of clarity for me, because there is nobody to grant rights to the low line currently present, my understanding.
Okay, Ms. Jacobs, what other questions you have, and that'd be great, and we'll get the applicant to answer those, or Mr. Morgan.
And also, this is a picky question, but there was some PUDs have definitions in them in the beginning, and there wasn't a list of definitions that I saw. And if I failed to see them, I'm sorry. But what exactly is their definition of a green roof? Because that might become very important in that tight area about how that's defined, how that's built, how that's used for stormwater right there. It's just a curiosity for me. Let me see, I think that might have been my main questions, because I think staff handle the rest of the questions yesterday. Yes, those two are my main questions.
Great, thank you. Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hellman, Mr. Madden, who would like to answer those?
I can answer them if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Jacobs, the easement for the low line will ultimately be an easement that's granted to the city. There are a couple of those documents that are out there that Julia Copeland, who's the city's corporation counsel, and I will be working with to draft that. There's actually one with the Sky Garden, and the way it works now is the Sky Garden is responsible for that maintenance until such time as the low line takes it over. So of course, we would continue to be responsible for its maintenance until the low line and the city take it over. And then they would be responsible for maintaining it.
And I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. I'm assuming you're retaining that beautiful warehouse building as part of your redevelopment. Am I correct on that?
You're exactly correct.
Great. Okay. I didn't want to make that assumption, but it's a beautiful building. I've enjoyed many performances in there. So I think it has a great opportunity to be incorporated into your PUD.
We're really excited about that. And it's too bad that you missed Stewart's youth in that building. You could have seen incredible performances of how to pack meat and distribute it and all the sort of great things he used to do when it was a freezer, effectively. The green roof, the green roof was a suggestion from Kinsey Holton and City Stormwater, and we'll get with him to clarify that. He had asked for a portion of that roof to be green, so we'll sort that out with him. That's a good question, and I think we can get a definition in there that works.
It's a great idea. It's a great opportunity to show how those work, but I do know there are bad examples of green roofs and good examples of green roofs, and the technology is changing all the time. So I just was curious that get fleshed out just a bit. Thank you for your answers, Mr. Hellman. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Jacobs? Did you have anything else on that, or?
No, but I did
So-
make a motion to approve. So.
Great, thank you, Ms. Jacobs. There's a
second
motion
that
by Mr.
motion.
with conditions, correct?
With the conditions put forth by staff. Yes.
Okay, great. And Ms. Harrison, did you?
I'm going to second that motion. I think this is a great way of doing projects. I know that there are some comments about, PUDs and how they operate in, the size and undermining zoning. But this is that moment when people are very creative on very small pieces of infill. And when you see that creativity, PUDs are a great mechanism for that. And, I have to commend Mr. Hellman for taking that step because it does show some ingenuity on sites like this when you're doing PUDs. and they can be successful in small, less than an acre size. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. So we have a motion by Ms. Jacobs, a second by Ms. Harrison. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll do a roll call vote. And again, I don't know if Ms. Bryant Jenkins is with us. I don't think she is. If she is, she can chime in. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs?
I in favor.
Great. And I think Ms. Johnson is with us. Ms. Johnson, how are you today?
I'm
Are you in favor of the application? I'm sorry.
You're muted. There we go.
I should be unmuted. And yes, I'm fine, thanks. And I in favor.
Thank you, ma'am. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lampasas?
I in favor.
Great. Mr. Lassane? Mr. Lassane?
I in favor.
Okay, thank you. And I'm in favor as well. So that's 6 in favor, none opposed. So that application passes. Thank you all. Number 3 under, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused here. Under rezonings is 228 President Street, West Side, Peninsula, TMS number 4600701-037, approximately 0.56 acres. Request rezoning from 2.5-story Old City Historic Height District classification to 3-story Old City Height District classification. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a fairly large infill parcel in the west side of Charleston, in the west side neighborhood. President Street is running north and south here. Burke High School is just to the north. There is a city park to the west, and to the south is the Gadsden Green development for affordable housing, as well as west side neighborhood housing. And on this site in the past, and you'll see the outline of them here, were, I guess, 4 very kind of rundown, 1-story, almost motel-like apartments that were demolished in the last year. And there's interest in redevelopment on the site, which is a good thing for this neighborhood to get some good active uses on this site. And the developers are very interested in having a little bit more height here. They're currently at 2.5 stories, and they would like to go to 3 stories. And we'll show some pictures that gives you a sense of what the surrounding area has. There are a good many 3-story or more houses in this area, particularly in the Woodall Court area and along Killian's and Noonan. So we'll show some of those images to give you a sense of the surrounding area. It's in our Century 5 plan as part of the urban area. The entire west side neighborhood essentially is designated for urban. And so this is in line with those types of urban neighborhood uses. This is an aerial image of the site from earlier this year that shows that the structures are now all gone from it. Here is a street level view. I think this is just from this morning, as a matter of fact, not even street view. It wasn't even in street view with the demolition. And you see a 2-story house immediately adjacent to it. If you look in the distance, you see what looks like a 3 or a 4-story house right there, a 2 or a 3-story house right there. And then we'll kind of keep going around the neighborhood. Oops. Okay, there we go. Let's see, did I skip one? There we go. So over here, you have a 3-story house just to the south, 2-story right here, 2-story here. This is to the north. This is Burke High School and President Street going north through Burke High School. So you see Woodall Court. This is right here where you see these 3- and 4-story houses back over here. And here is Noonan Street with the 3-story house backing up to this site. Another fairly tall house that is about 3 stories. And then further down President Street at forget the cross street here, south of Noonan, but these were houses that were 2.5 stories roughly. Some of them were almost 3 that were built. There were a number of those built in the last 2, 3, 4 years. So we felt comfortable with this request, given that there's a lot of difference in height in the surrounding area, and felt that it was not too great a difference to recommend for, and therefore we're recommending approval of the change.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I think Mr. Richardson will be presenting for the applicant. Is that correct? And if he's available, if you'll promote him, and Mr. Richardson, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
I didn't see Todd Richardson on the attendees list. I do see an Abigail Richardson. So Abigail, I've allowed you to talk, and I'm not sure if you're related or if it's the right person. There's also someone on the phone at 803-354-3985. So I'll allow both of those people to talk. And if you are Todd Richardson, or if you're presenting, please let me know.
One of you go ahead whenever you're ready. Can we confirm if any of them are there?
Yeah, they're both have permission to talk. Neither is unmuted. I have asked them to
Richardson
unmute.
is very familiar to you all with Planning Commission. I wonder if he was thinking we were at 5 o'clock today, assuming the regular meeting time, because you all know him. He's in a number of planning. The 803 number is open. Caller at 803-543-9858. Are you here for this one here on President Street?
We are not here for that one. We're
Okay.
later on.
Okay.
So I'm not trying to cut Mr. Richardson off. If we get him, we'd love to have him or somebody from there, but I don't think there's anyone else signed up to speak in favor or opposed to this.
No.
So wait a second and see if Mr. Richardson comes on. If not, we'll close the public aspect and we'll
If
discuss
you
it.
all can bear with me for about 30 seconds, I'll try texting him.
Thank you. We'll do that. Thank you.
Looks like someone chatted us and said that Todd is having computer issues and he's trying to get on. So
Okay.
He's got Mike. Yeah, he's responding to me. He's got Microsoft issues. Hold, please.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Well, we've already read into the record, you have a presentation.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to give him an opportunity to get his thing straight and we can hear him. Why don't we move on to the next item on the agenda and we'll come back to him in a few minutes. How about that?
Okay, if you'll like to do that.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read. Right now we're on hold for number 3 President Street. We'll read number 4 into the record. Properties on King Street, Canterbury, Elliotboro Peninsula, TMS number 4600 802 102, 103, 104, portion of 015 and 098, approximately 2.151 acres, requested zoning from 4 and 6-story old city district classification to 5 and 7-story old city historic district classification. Mr. Morgan.
Okay, and Jim, Todd is asking if he can have the link resent to him.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll go on this one. Okay, so this is a site. It's adjacent to another site that you all saw for height changes not too long ago. So very much in keeping with what's going on that site to the north. But this is the property. It's at the end of Columbus Street at King. It backs up but does not front on St. Philip Street, and it comes all the way down to Spring Street. And the areas of the site that they are interested in changing are this area in the pinkish red that they'd like to take from the 6-story Old City District at present to the 7-story Old City District. And again, it's a good ways in from St. Philip Street, a good ways in from Spring, and up within 25 feet of King Street on the east. Then they would also like to go from the 4-story to the 5-story district for this frontage along King Street here. That was the original request, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Just to orient you all, this is, owned by Evening Post Industries, Post and Courier parent company. Post and Courier's offices up until recently were right across the street. Their printing plant is still across the street. They have moved their offices and ultimately they're going to have redevelopment there. But in the nearer term, there's going to be redevelopment to the north that you all have already seen and endorsed height changes up there. Just to orient you to what the city plan says, this is in our urban core area in the current plan. So the tallest and most intense buildings would be in that area. Here is an aerial image that is the current parking lots that are on the site, and then there is a older storefront building here that we'll show some images of as well. Immediately to the south is a new student housing development. Across the street is the U-Haul facility on King, and then there are a couple of houses on St. Philip Street, as well as some other surface lots back there. And here is an oblique image that shows the student housing to the south on a fairly substantial structure, and then the neighborhood buildings on Spring and St. Philip, and then all the surface lots to the existing areas and then to the north. Here is some of the building on King Street that is the retail buildings that are part of the site. And here is some of the parking areas on King Street that are part of the site. And then the applicant has provided some slides too to give us some background. These are images from just their applicant. I'll let the applicant go through these. I would like to point out a couple of things on these real quick, if that's okay. They've got just the overall background, which I went through. I'll let the applicant explain what they're showing here or here. We're not going to go into that. What I wanted to get to, this of course we've already shown, which is the plan map and plan site. And here are the heights in the on the zoning grid. And then here's an image that helps you understand what the existing zoning is right here. The student housing to the south actually goes to 7 stories. It's known as Hoffler Place. What their current zoning allows up to 6 stories here and 4 stories here. And then the request would be for just this portion here to go to 7 stories, and then the front 25 feet to go to 5 stories. They have further delineated this by showing that they would like to have massing of a building that has a kind of entry court, and the 5 stories would be on either side of that entry court. And that factors in a little bit to our recommendation. So I'll show another image from their images here. And that is this image here that shows King Street and Columbus. Really what they are after is the 5 stories on the northern side of this King Street frontage and the southern side. The 80 feet in the middle that's part of the entry court, they aren't as concerned with having 5 stories there. So essentially, we are very comfortable with the 7-story request to the rear. So we're endorsing that. And what we would suggest that commission do, and I believe the applicant is willing to move forward from this standpoint, is that the 5 stories only be on the southern end and the northern end, and then a 80-foot gap in the middle that stays at 4 stories. This just helps prevent in the future, if the property were to change hands again and somebody wanted to do a much larger 5-story building along King, it's fairly uncommon for that long a 5-story building to be on King. There's some shorter buildings that go to 5 floors, such as the Hoffler Place or the Hotel Bennett, but that much distance is kind of unusual for King. So that's why we would recommend only the 5 stories on the southern and northern end of this request there. And that is pretty much where we stand. I hope I didn't steal too much of the applicant's thunder by going through some of their slides. Very helpful to explain the situation, and that is our recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. So is that conditions, you're recommending approval with that condition, or?
It's not a condition because we can't really condition on a standard rezoning like this.
Okay.
We're just suggesting that the request be amended to not include this middle 80 feet by 25 feet.
Okay.
And I know that's kind of nitpicky and a really small change, but to us, it's really important given the context of where it is on Columbus and King, and,
right.
and that is a key element in future design. And of course, BAR will look at all the design of these. And I know they've got some images in here that are part of submittals that ultimately will go to BAR, but that's not really y'all's purview. Y'all are just kind of looking at the box, you know, the overall building envelopes, you know, things like this or things like this. And so that's why we thought it was important to use that.
Okay. So we'll ask the applicant when he speaks to address that as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I see several people. I don't know who will be presenting. Jim, can you tell me that? And if whoever is, if you can promote them. And
yeah, all the presenters have been promoted, so you all have the ability to unmute.
So ladies and gentlemen, I think all gentlemen, but y'all go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, members of the Planning Commission and Christopher. We appreciate the opportunity to present this application. My name is Ron Owens. I work with Evening Post Industries and on the board of Evening Post Industries. As most of you know, EPI has owned property and operated businesses in this area for over 70 years. We own about 12 acres around King and Columbus and have been thoughtfully planning and developing this property for the last 5+ years. EPI started with the Guild, our phase 1, and are actually working on phase 2 right now with Greystar, which you recently received planning and city council approval for their height and rezoning. This application is for our other partner, Liberty. Being long-term owners, we carefully considered our request for increased height and have worked closely with city planning, the community, and our neighbors to make sure this fits in with the overall framework of Charleston. Over the last 5+ years, EPI has been developing the master plan for phase 2. We thought it was important to have diversity of uses, and this is one of the things that has made Charleston such a great city that we all live in. We spent a lot of time looking at the market, talking with the community, and arrived at an urban opportunity for senior living. We thought Charleston would benefit from a high quality senior living facility where people can age in place in the community that they've grown up in, and believe that this use is a great complement to Upper King Street. We've had overwhelming support from the community regarding this use and look forward to continuing with this development project. Once we determined that senior living was a very viable option and supported by the neighbors and the community, we spent a great deal of time trying to determine time and resources who would be our best partner. We could have sold this property to a developer and let them go through the process and find someone to operate a senior living and then leave town, but we didn't think that was the best approach. We really looked and spent a long time finding our partner, Liberty, and have gotten to know them over the last 5 years. We actually have a healthcare business and have gotten to know them through that. What we liked about Liberty was their passion for quality, because they both operate, which we thought was very important, and they build high caliber projects for the long term. They don't just develop, they operate. So we think that's critical for the long-term success. They're a family-owned group with 145-year history, and we're excited about this project and hope that you will be also. We believe this application, as Christopher said, fits in with what's previously been approved for both neighboring properties, and we hope you'll support our request and we can continue towards the development of this wonderful project.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Anyone else from your team going to speak?
Yes, I think I'd like to introduce Liberty and Will Purvis. He's going to give a quick overview of the project. Will and Patrick, go ahead. Will?
Yeah,
Thank
hey,
you.
good afternoon. This is Will Purvis. I'm on Patrick Allen's screen here, but
next slide,
again,
please. Next slide.
Again, my name's Will Purvis. I'm president of Liberty Senior Living. Liberty is a 145-year-old family-operated group of healthcare businesses headquartered in Wilmington, North Carolina. In addition to senior living communities, these businesses are skilled nursing facilities, home care, hospice, medical equipment, and pharmacy. We have the oldest existing pharmacy in North Carolina and one of the oldest in the nation. It's our intent to provide the complete senior care continuum in the communities we serve. We operate senior living communities throughout North and South Carolina, Tennessee, have communities under construction in Palm Beach County, Florida, and New Orleans. We selectively evaluate expansion opportunities in special markets and locations like this one. We currently own and operate South Bay at Mount Pleasant Continuing Care Retirement Community and are thrilled to be opening our assisted living memory care building at 194 Spring Street next year. 10 years ago, we started looking for a location on the peninsula where we could offer the full continuum of services, independent living, as well as our care components. 3 years ago, we started planning this community with EPI, a like-minded family-owned business focused on long-term ownership and who understands healthcare. This partnership with local family business makes this project even more rewarding. I would add this would be our fifth project of similar size and scale we've designed with another long-term partner in LS3P. We've enjoyed working with our new partners, Scott Parker of Design Works, as well as Robert M. Stern Architects. Presently, a full continuum retirement community does not exist on the peninsula. This community will offer its residents the freedom to age in place under their own terms in their own neighborhood and not have to move to a suburban location. Our experience in this space shows that this placemaking with our programming leads to a longer, more rewarding and fulfilled lives. We're excited about bringing that to this project. Thanks. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick.
Next
Thanks.
slide, please.
My name is Patrick Allen. I'm a member of the development team here at Liberty. Next slide. As you guys can see, here's our site. We're at the intersection of King and Columbus with Spring Street to the south, Line to the north, and St. Philip to the west. Additionally, there is a small building located along King Street at the intersection of King and Columbus. Yep, we're working with the neighborhood, Preservation Society, Historical Charleston Foundation to figure out how best to incorporate that into our project. Just last week, we had very profitable meeting with Erin Minigan. I'm confident she is on and will speak about this project next, about how do we make that building fit within our program. Will mentioned our program. Next slide, please. I want to talk just briefly about what a program and a project like this would entail. We'll have no less than 3 dining facilities. We'll have multiple exercise and fitness facilities, pools, salons, spas, places to get pedicures, and then a host of different club rooms and multi-purpose rooms where we'll host lectures for our residents, art classes, a whole host of activities to, as Will mentioned, increase the quality of life. Additionally, what we've heard in all of our meetings with the city is just the importance of a active and vibrant King Street. So one of the things that we've committed to is ensuring that the face of our building, the elevation of our building along King Street has lots of interest, lots of glazing, lots of open spaces for folks to be able to ingress and egress in and out of the building, just to improve that grand experience along King Street. So what we're asking for today is a 5th floor along King Street, and then a 7th floor stepped back into the center of the building. It's also important to be clear about what this is not a request for. We do not intend to ask for a 5th floor along King and a 7th floor interior to the building, and then go to BAR and ask for a 6th and 8th by architectural merit. I want to reemphasize that is not our intent in the least. All we are attempting to do is to gain a 5th and 7th to ensure that we have the square footage necessary to build the level of amenities and care that our future residents expect from a product such as this. Richard will take us through some of the more technical aspects now.
Thank you, Patrick. I'll try to be brief. On this page, you can see how Columbus Street terminates in an entrance court for the first-time visitors. And you can see that there are 2 other entrances, one on Spring and one on St. Philip Street. And the idea is that we want to distribute the traffic and stratify in a way so that we keep most of the traffic off of St. Philip Street, which was a request of the neighborhood. As you are aware, projects of this size often have a service component, and a lot of times they unfortunately find themselves in places where we wish they weren't. But we have worked very hard to keep our service area in the interior of the property and only beautiful driveways that go back into them. As everybody has said, the height is in the center and only along King, and that we keep the 3-story residential scale buildings along St. Philip Street. And we've gotten lots of great support from the neighbors. We've had copious meetings and lots of dialogue. And we can go to the next slide. The response has been very positive in all respects. This is the view from Columbus Street. You could see that the Evening Post is on the right, U-Haul's in the front on the left, and Hoffler Place is on the left. It's really important that when people arrive, that they have an orienting device, and the idea is for this to be a beautiful building. Everybody has really liked the materials, the high quality, the ground floor. They really especially like the way the top floor has been dealt with. So even though we hope to be granted a 7th floor, the idea is to not make it stand out, but to kind of recede in like a roof, like many beautiful buildings in our town do. We are working things out, as Patrick said, with the historical groups on the best way to fit the 609 King building. Next page, please. In addition to outstanding architecture, Design Works and Robert Stern's office and LS3P are working to enhance the perimeter at the grade level with wonderful alleys so that a large parcel like this can be navigated by neighbors and visitors alike, and continue the beauty of the Charleston Alley idea. Next, two slides, please. So you can just skip to the next one. Christopher already stole my thunder on that. That's fine. Same here. And this one, I would just, wait, go back, please. I would like to say, really, the seventh to the north of the property is the Gray Star property, which this board granted a 7th floor to, and then across the street are 8-story sites that have a 4-story buffer at the street, just like this parcel does. And that's pretty much it. We're not rezoning to get to an 8th floor at BAR. Next. And then these are diagrams, or just diagrams showing a request compared to what's allowed by right. At King, the 5th floor, the purple is the 7th floor. It's in the interior. We're leaving Spring and St. Philip alone. Next slide, please. And on this parcel, you can see the massing on the right that we intend, so that we have the narrow fingers of the project facing the neighborhood, which is good urban planning. You can also see that we have 2 sections of 5 stories along King. We are planning to do 3 stories along Spring in a 4-story zone, because we do feel like that the buildings to the west of us are shorter. And so that's something that we are working with the BAR and with our design team to address. So all in all, next slide, we're not looking to make anything bigger. We're aiming to make it better. And we feel like if you look at this little sectional drawing here, this is a imagined cut along Columbus Street from Columbus through the property to St. Philip. The area in the middle that's in the dark orange is where the tower is. And that would be visible from both the neighborhood potentially and from but mostly from Columbus Street. And because of the building on St. Philip Street, the wings would not be visible. The area that's hatched is what's allowed by right. The area we're asking for is the lighter orange above that line. Next slide, please. And again, Mr. Morgan dealt with this. So we would just appreciate your support and approval, and we'll answer any questions at this time.
Great. Is that anyone else going to speak, or is that it?
No, that's it for our team.
Great. Thank you. No, thanks for all that information. It's very good and very informative. I think we have, Jim, I think we have a written comment from Historic Charleston. Is that correct? Letter?
Charlie, this is Chloe, and I'm back now to help with the public comment portion. Our first speaker for this item is Justin Schwebler with the Historic Charleston Foundation, and this is a speaker, not a written comment.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, Justin, you go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. Good afternoon. I'm Justin Schwebler with Historic Charleston Foundation. While HCF continues to oppose the demolition of the historic Art Deco building located on this site, we do not object to the rezoning request to increase this height district classification from 4 and 6 stories to 5 and 7 stories for portions of the site facing King Street and the central portion of the parcel. This position is based upon the high level of architectural renderings and quality of material palette we've seen in the application pending the Board of Architectural Review. In additional, if the additional height is granted by the Planning Commission, our expectation is that this exceptional level of architecture and materials will carry forward. We would like to be on the record to continue, because we continue to have concerns about the impact of 6 and 7-story buildings along Spring and St. Philip Streets, but we anticipate this will be addressed by the BAR. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I guess, I'm sorry, Chloe, there's a letter from, is that from Cannonboro, Elliott Borough in favor? Is that correct?
Yes, and you can just state that for the record.
Okay.
Planning Commission received it in advance.
Great. For the record, Cannonboro, Elliott Borough Neighborhood Association, Marion Hawkins sent us a letter in favor of this rezoning request. We also have, I think that's the people in favor. I think there's one person signed up, Ms. Minigan from Preservation Society, to speak in opposition. Is that correct? And if so, you can promote her.
Aaron, you have audio abilities whenever you'd like to start.
Go ahead, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Erin Minigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. First, we would like to thank the applicant for reaching out to us on this request. We have been closely involved in the review of this project at the Board of Architectural Review and making positive steps with the team regarding the historic building and potential incorporation into the new design. However, we are disappointed to see this application come forward to the Planning Commission as an attempt to achieve additional heights. The Preservation Society stands for the integrity of the height districts as drawn, which were designed to be responsive and compatible with the existing context. This site is in a highly sensitive architectural environment between the King Street corridor and Cannonboro, Elliotboro neighborhood. Rather than requesting to rezone to the next height district, the appropriate avenue to seek additional height is through the BAR process, which provides a pathway to attain an additional floor in exchange for architectural merit. However, we remind the Commission there is now specific criteria in place for your review of height district rezonings. Under Section 54.306 of the zoning ordinance, you are tasked with considering the context of the property, the character of the immediate area, street widths around the property, and whether the rezoning request will be compatible with surrounding properties. We argue the additional height is not compatible with the character of the surrounding properties. Specifically, 5 stories of height directly on King Street and 6 stories of height facing the adjacent 2- and 3-story buildings of the Cannonboro, Elliotboro neighborhood will overwhelm the sensitive historic context. We strongly believe the request to upzone from 4 and 6 to 5 and 7 stories on this site does not meet the intent of the ordinance and would be detrimental to the character of the adjacent small-scale residential neighborhood and King Street streetscape. Therefore, we urge you to recommend disapproval of this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minigan. I think that's let me give the applicant a chance to respond to the opposed. Would anyone like to speak on that?
Yes, I would simply say that we have worked closely with the historical groups on the neighborhood, and they are split on this. Everybody loves the building and the quality and the intensity of this design, and what we're intending to do in the public realm is possible because we're getting the 7th floor. And this is something that we did achieve across the alley with Graystar with the same kind of design goals in mind. So I would urge that you approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that time. That is everyone that signed up to speak in favor of opposed. So that'll close the public aspect of this application. I'd like commission members, any questions, comments, or motions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hussain, you go ahead.
I think I have a question for Mr. Gow. Mr. Morgan mentioned in his presentation about the section along King Street that you're asking for a 5-story limitation on, and he mentioned sort of cutting out that middle section that will be your entry drive. Is the applicant amenable to that amendment that's being proposed by the city?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Great. Mr. Chairman, in that case, I would like to say, in consideration of the height limitations to the north and to the south along King Street, which are both 7 floors, I think this is reasonable. I believe that the 5-story height along King Street is appropriate. That is what the Hoffler Place building just immediately to the south is, immediately along King Street. And I think this is is certainly in context in this part of the neighborhood. So I will move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hussain. So the motion by Mr. Hussain. Any other comments, questions, or second to the motion?
I'll second the motion. I do have one question. During this presentation, you're talking about the height, the changes in going through BAR and the clarification in our ordinance. And one thing that kind of called out to me, Richard, and it's really a question, is that 100 feet from Spring Street that you're coming in by, you're coming in by 100 feet. And so visually, if that cross section you showed us exactly, we're not going to see that extra story in the sense of where we are in St. Philip Street. If I'm not, and so, the thing is that we all know that zoning goes with the land, but I think it's important to just see how people can just transition in the city, and having that type of place is really important. And I think this is a good project and concept for having these changes and additions in height and these rezonings. So I'm in favor of this, and so I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harrison. So there's a motion by Mr. Sane, second by Ms. Harrison. If there's no other comments or questions, we'll do a roll call vote.
Chairman, can I get clarification from Mr. Lasane on his motion? Would
Yes,
his
sir.
motion include the staff suggestion that the 80-foot gap in the middle across from Columbus Street be left out of the
I believe it did, didn't it, Mr. Lasane? I believe it did.
And I may not have written it down correctly, but just for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Morgan, for clarifying. I actually didn't mention that, but I meant to. So my motion would include that 80-foot section in the middle of the 5-story strip along King Street being removed from the application.
Right, and I think the applicant even said that they were okay with that, as I recall just now. So I think he's thumbs up, so that's good. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Sane. Ms. Harrison, you're okay with that as well as a second?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so there's a motion by Mr. Sane, second by Ms. Harrison. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll do a roll call vote. I don't think Ms. Bryant Jenkins is with us. So Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs?
No, not in favor.
Okay. Ms. Johnson?
Aye, in favor.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Lampasas?
Charlotte, this is a tough one for me. I
Okay.
absolutely like the design of this new improved higher height one, but I think we continue to increase these buildings, and it's just, we're looking like any other city, and I think it is not favorable for our town, and I'm having a challenge with this. I love the new plan. I like the step back. And I'm very torn on how to vote on this. I mean, is this a continuation that we're going to keep getting these applications? You know, we've already moved to do it on the Gray Star building and the Hoffler building. I mean, I think we put a plan in place and we're not staying by that plan.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm just saying, does anybody on our commission have any comments about that? Harry, it was your motion.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. And I think what we have is we have a development team that has presented a design to the community. It's been in the newspaper now for several months, and they're not seeking, at least the way I understand what's been presented here today, they're not seeking to build a taller building than they have discussed at the BAR or in the community. What they're seeking is our approval to build what they have proposed. So I don't think what you're going to get as a result of this particular amendment is a taller building. They have the right to ask for this building at the moment under their current zoning. So and that's the building they have been discussing in public and at the BAR to this point.
Thank you, Ms. Sain. And Ms. Lepsis, I hear you and I feel somewhat of you. I think we have to look at each one individually as they come forward and make a decision on that. So I know it's tough, but if you have anything else you want to add, you go ahead.
No, I'm vacillating back and forth. And I think that because of the architectural design, I like it a lot better than the other design that is currently in place. But this is something that I am not in favor very much of going forward with. So I will vote for it this time because I like the plan so much more and I like what the work that they've done and obvious how much work and with staff. So I will vote aye in favor.
Thank you, Ms. Lepsis. And I understand your concerns and agree with a lot of them. So Mr. Lasane?
Aye, in favor. And I'd like to say too, Ms. Olympus, I agree with you. I'd agree with your concern, and I think we all need to stay vigilant.
That's why we got Ms. Olympus. She'll keep us focused. So
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sane. And I'm in favor as well. So that's 5 in favor and 1 opposed, if I've got my math right. So that application passes. Thank you to everyone on that.
Thank you.
Do we have going back to number 3? So we read in the record, are they available now? Mr. Richardson, do you know?
They should be.
Okay. So let me just read back into the record so we don't get confused with the minutes. We're back on 228 President, West Side Peninsula. We've heard a presentation from staff that they're in favor of this application, correct, Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Richardson, if you're available, we'd love to hear from you.
You're still muted. There we go.
Mr. Richardson?
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing?
Good. We're waiting for you, so thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Microsoft dealt us a lovely blow this week of a high security upgrade that killed our calendars and emails and everything. So we're back and we're here and we are in the flesh. Thank you very much for hearing us today. My name is Todd Richardson. I'm a landscape architect and land planner with Synchronicity. We are representing the clients and the property owners for this property at 228 President Street. The parcel is slightly over a half acre. It's currently zoned DR2F, diverse residential. Its parcel shape is a long, skinny rectangle. And current topographical conditions, its lowest point is 4.4 feet. We are in the revised AE11 flood hazard district with the city's requirement of a +2 freeboard. That requires any residential structure, its base finished floor elevation to be at 13 feet. There's a high range that will go to 9 feet of elevation for homes on this property to clear the city's requirement. Based on the city's BAR architectural requirements, anything at 6 feet or above is counted as a story as you elevate a structure for that. We feel that given the current 2.5 story height, we are left with 1.5 stories and a very challenging, encumbered, and slightly significantly impacted use of our land per our by right zoning designation. We feel that this is a contextually appropriate request and application based on the adjacent heights of existing housing on neighboring properties on Woodall Court, Noonan, and Killian Streets, which are at 3, 3.5, and 4 stories. This would give us an opportunity to provide housing that is attainable, and it would give us 2 functional living floors above garage parking within those units. So that is the intent and our respectful request for the application. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. And I see there's no one to sign up to speak or any written comments in favor or opposed. So that will close the public aspect of this and ask commission members questions, comments, or a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jacobs, you go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to move for approval. We've already considered property in this general area to take this height up, and I think it's going to be something the commission has to be looking at in the future to accommodate for low zones, but also to give, appropriate use of the property, and in this case, maybe even attainable use of the property for housing. So I would like to move for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Other comments, questions, or second?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to second Ms. Jacobs' motion, and I agree with everything Ms. Jacobs said about this area. And it does seem like Mr. Richardson's presentation calls for a reevaluation of this area because I can imagine this becoming a repeated and reasonable request in the future. So just note that, Christopher. This might be something we ought to look at that whole area in the future. Thanks.
Good thought, Mr. Lassane. So there's a motion by Ms. Jacobs, a second by Mr. Lassane. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Thanks. Ms. Jacobs?
Aye, in favor.
Ms. Johnson?
Here.
I favor.
Thank you. Ms. Lympousis?
I in favor.
Great. Mr. Lasane?
Aye, in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. So that's 6 in favor and none opposed. So that application passes. The next item on the agenda is number 5, property on Stewart Street, East Central Peninsula, TMS number 459. 0104011, approximately 0.6 acres. Request rezoning from general business GB to Upper Peninsula UP, and from 5-story Old City Height District to 4-12 Old City Height District classification. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. So this property is just off Morrison Drive, which is over here to the east, and just south of UG Street, which is here to the north. And then you've got Hanover Street to the west, and of course Stewart Street to the south. The Cooper River Courts housing is just to the south. Already, when we set up the Upper Peninsula zoning district, the properties to the east, which is the ILA pension fund, if I've got that proposed or that name correct, and the applicant can correct me if I've got that wrong, but I believe it's their pension fund is located here. And then you've got Taco Boy, which is in the location here, and some of their parking is on some leased land here. Actually, I think Taco Boy also has some parking on this subject property as well. And then you've got some older commercial buildings and some residential buildings here on Stewart. So it's kind of a mix in this area, but we're seeing the evolution of the Morrison Drive corridor, of course, and that's in line with a lot of our plans. The current heights in the area, of course, where you've got the Upper Peninsula zoning are the 4-12 district, and then you've got the 5-story for the other general business, and then Cooper River Courts is 2.5 or 3. This is in the urban core designated area in the current plan and in the future plan as well. So that gave us comfort with, what is being requested. Here's an aerial that just shows the overall context. Again, the ILA pension fund is here, the Taco Boy facility here, including some of their parking on the current subject property. The Charleston water system has, I guess, about a 60-foot tall water tank right here, and then the Cooper River Courts and some of the residential that's over here. Baker and Brewers here, which is a restaurant brewery as well. There's a new 4-story office building here, as again we see this evolution of the Morrison Drive corridor and UG Street area. Here's the subject property from the street. It's got a fence in front of it because the parking relates to UG Street at present. Here is the surrounding context. You see the Cooper River Courts to the right, and further down Stewart Street looking towards Meeting. And we are recommending approval on this because of the fact that this is in our urban core in the current plan, or our city center in the future plan. So we felt comfortable with this request, and it is surrounded on 2 sides also by Upper Peninsula zoning as it is at present. So to expand it over made a lot of sense to us.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Chloe, do we have, I don't know who's going to speak, Mr. Ramos, Mr. Owens, Mr. Bailey? I don't know who's, if you'll promote whoever, that'd be great. And y'all are ready whenever y'all are.
All right, they're in the process of moving over now. Just make sure that. All right. Everybody should be able to, if applicants, if you could please share your video.
And gentlemen, y'all go ahead whenever you're ready. Thank you.
This is Steve Ramos with LS3P. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you. I had it on mute for a second. I'm here on behalf of ILA Chapter 1422A. They are the owners of this property. I also have Leonard Bailey, who is the president of that chapter, joining us today. Mr. Morgan did a pretty good summary. I think this is a fairly straightforward application. We are asking to be included in the Upper Peninsula zoning district. That zoning district is one of the more creative zoning districts that the city created. It has been a critical catalyst into the revitalization of this part of the city. I think what's most promising about this zoning designation is that it is what we consider an incentive-based district. You are not guaranteed to have greater densities or additional floors. You have to earn those things. You have to earn them through incentives such as providing public green space, providing things like workforce housing, as well as sustainable design features. So it's really a win-win because you have to provide things that are a greater good to the community as a whole in order to achieve those densities as well as the additional heights. This is in line with the Century 5 plan. It's consistent with the adjacent properties. And we believe all in all, it is a real good thing for the city. And with that, we kindly ask for your approval with this application. Thank you.
Great. Is anyone else from your team going to speak, or is that it?
That's it for today. Small team.
No, thank you, and that's fine. We appreciate it. I see there's no one signed up to speak in favor or opposed, and no written comments, so that'll close the public aspect of item number 5. I'd ask commission members questions, comments, or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff. I think this is a reasonable request. Christopher, do you have any sense as to why this particular parcel was not included in the Upper Peninsula zoning district when we passed that earlier?
I think it's that it did not have frontages on UG or Morrison, because we based the initial parcels that were in that district on key streets, and Morrison and UG were some of the key streets. And I think at that time we had not looked at the ownership patterns, that these properties are owned together with the same group here. And then there is some degree of connection with the pension fund here and all that. So it, had these all been in one parcel, I think they would have been included in the UP when we initially set it up.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, in that case, I would like to move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Sain.
Zonings that are a part of this request.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lassane. Other questions, comments, or second to the motion? I'll go ahead and then second Mr. Lassane's motion. I agree with him, and I appreciate him, all the clarification we got on that. Other questions, comments? If not, there's a motion by Mr. Lassane, and I'm seconding the motion. And I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs?
Nay, not in favor.
Okay. Ms. Johnson?
Aye, in favor.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Lympousis?
Aye, in favor.
Ms. Lassane?
Aye, in favor.
And I'm in favor, so that's 5 in favor and 1 opposed, so this application passes. Next item on the agenda is number 6, which is 518 East Bay, Ports Area Peninsula, TMS number 459-1302011, approximately 0.67 acres, requested zoning from light industrial LI to mixed use, workforce housing MU2 WH, and from 5-story and WP Old City Height District classification to 6-story Old City Height District classification. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is another area of the city that we're seeing some evolution in, and I think it's probably a pretty good thing when you look at the kind of quality of some of the existing structures that are over here, that the subject property has one of them on as well. But this is currently a fairly nondescript warehouse on the property that is seeking to go from the light industrial, which had been used in the past, to the MU2 workforce housing designation. And they'd also like to go from the existing 5-story height district to the, and also a portion of the site is the WP waterfront height district 2, the front 10 feet or so here along Washington Street. And some of that is just older mapping that we have, but we do want to clean that up if this height is approved. And then to take the whole property and take it to the 6-story Old City Height District. And again, it's surrounded by the 5-story here, and then further to the south is a 4-story area, and then the waterfront designation to the east. So looking at the surrounding context of this, of course, it does show up in the urban core in our current plan. So that justifies greater heights, justifies the MU density, that kind of thing. We see an aerial here that shows the subject property, the port's proximity to it, the plumbing warehouse to the north, the plumbing laydown yard to the south. I will zoom in a little bit more. Again, you see the fairly nondescript warehouse that's on the subject property, and the plumbing laydown yard to the south. Fairly dilapidated historic structure further to the south. And then you see the property here, and seeing the port in the rear and some of the older commercial buildings. These have already seen some renovation here. This is a very historic structure right here at the corner of Charlotte and East Bay. And then there's a newer building that's about probably 15 years old or so. That's an office building of several stories right here at the corner of East Bay and Chapel. And then here's a street view. The building is right up on the street side. So, you know, it's a little bit tight in there at present. I think with reconstruction, there may be an opportunity to get a little bit more room for the kind of public area there. But here's the overall look on East Bay Street around it. And that's facing north. And this is just looking to the south. You see again how the building juts out literally to the edge of the right of way. I assume it's not in the right of way. I don't think it is, but it's very close out there. You know, staff feels that this is an area that could use some redevelopment. These are structures that certainly aren't really contributing a lot to the city at present. With some redevelopment, I think we could have a better entry corridor along East Bay here. The MU makes a lot of sense based on the comp plan, you know, it being in the urban core. And then we are comfortable with the 6-story because you've got the port on one side, you've got 5 stories to the south before you get to a 4-story area, 5 stories to the north, and then this whole side of East Bay is also at 5 stories before you get to the more neighborhood oriented 2.5 or 3-story that fronts on the purely neighborhood streets. So we were comfortable with that the change to the 6-story on the site, and also comfortable with MU2WH.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. We're going to hear from Mr. Hofford or Mr. Wilson, Chloe, and if so, why don't you promote them? Chloe on.
Okay, they both joined as panelists. Applicants, if you could please share your video.
Great. Mr. Hofford or Mr. Wilson, y'all go ahead. Thank you.
All right, this is Hank Holford. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. And this is a somewhat important project for us, and we'd like you to give it some thorough consideration. First of all, I'm Hank Holford with the Bernard Holford Construction Company, and I'm working with my partners, John Laurie and Rob Tullock, on this proposed project at 518 East Bay Street. We are requesting rezoning of the property from light industrial to MU2WH, a residential use. We're also requesting an additional floor of height for this project. This property is in the Port District and is not in a residential neighborhood. This area is somewhat neglected and in need of redevelopment. The best choice is high-end residential. There are a variety of other things that could be considered here, but we think the residential use is the most appropriate for this particular site. We are across East Bay from the Mazik-Ragsboro neighborhood, and we have met with them several times and discussed this project, and we've traded emails with Ferris Kaplan, the president of the neighborhood. He's actually out of town right now, but we will be meeting with him in the next week or so to continue our discussions. We've agreed to keep them involved in our design as we progress forward if we're approved for the zoning and the height for this project. We've also discussed this proposal with Councilman Robert Mitchell, and he's been supportive to date. And we've certainly gone to Vanjie Ransford and discussed this with her, and she's been supportive as well. We've met with the city staff on several occasions as they are supportive of our proposal and have kind of guided us through this process. We think our zoning request is common sense residential use and far superior to some of the other uses that could be requested, student housing, another music farm, bar, or something else along those lines. We plan to build high-end residential units on this side and will blend in with the neighborhood, which will blend in with the neighborhood best. Most importantly, our request for the additional floor is so that we can incorporate all the parking required for this project within the building itself. We will not enter any traffic onto East Bay Street. It'll all come off of Washington Street in and out. We will be able to get around 100 spaces, possibly a few more within the building, even though the zoning that we're requesting does not require us to provide all this parking. Common sense and economic success does require it. We're willing to set the front of the building back off of East Bay Street. It's pretty tight in there right now. So we're working with SGA architects and have started a 10-foot setback to create kind of an open plaza public space along East Bay to try and give a little breathing room to that part of the area. And it certainly helps us play with the architecture a little bit. If we're granted the 6th floor, we will set that back at least 25 feet off of East Bay Street also, so it will not be visible from any point of the street or the neighborhoods nearby. And we really do need that. In addition to providing the space to put all the parking in the building, it also helps bring the building up out of the flood zones. And I think that's an important thing that people need to consider as we go forward. Everybody's, concerned about the environmental changes and increased, hurricanes and floods and things. So we'd like to be able to build this building with a lot of freeboard in it. So I think that's about it. I would like you to at least remind you all that we've done some really nice projects in Charleston, and we've been very proud of all of them, and they've all turned out to be very high quality projects. And this one is planned to be the same. So, hopefully there's some credibility to the request based on our past experience with you. And then as I've seen you work your way through this meeting today, I'd hate to be the only one that doesn't make it through with approvals. It's been an interesting meeting, one of the better planning meetings we've ever attended. So with that, I'll just simply ask you to approve our request and let us proceed forward with some design. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hawford, for the information. Is anyone else? I've seen Mr. Wilson was listed. I don't want to cut him off. He will speak. If you were the only one speaking, that's fine.
He was my backup in case I fumbled.
Oh, okay, great. No, we're good. Thank you, Mr. Hawford. We have, I think, Justin, and I don't remember, Justin Schwebler from the Historic Charleston Foundation signed up. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, question.
Hold on one second for me. Ms. Harrison, can you hold just 1 second? Let me get this person. Is Mr. from Historic Charleston, is he available?
Yes, hold on 1 second, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. Good afternoon. I'm Justin Schwebler with the Historic Charleston Foundation. On behalf of HCF, we support the use rezoning from light industrial to mixed-use workforce housing for the 518 East Bay Street. Given the affordable housing crisis the city of Charleston faces, we are energized that workforce housing is being pursued. However, we encourage the team to contribute to the availability of residential units in the new buildings to income qualified individuals rather than using the fee in lieu option. HCF is strongly opposed to the height rezoning. The rezoning request for reclassification from 5 to 6 stories with the potential to request 7 stories from the Board of Architectural Review for architectural merit is not appropriate for this site. While this property is located within the urban core, it is not within the area of the peninsula deemed to be the spine, the area between King and Meeting Street where the tallest buildings should be located. 518 East Bay Street is adjacent to several 2.5-story historic single houses on Charlotte Street, 2 single-story commercial buildings directly across from it on East Bay, a 3.5-story office building, and a 3.5-story historic building with 2.5-story dependencies. The tallest building closest to this location is the corner of Calhoun and East Bay Street at 5 stories. A 6-story, potentially 7-story building at this location is architecturally in adjacency to historic properties in the Mezquite.
You're breaking up a little bit.
It's appropriately zoned at its current height district of 5 stories. Respectfully,
Okay.
Justin, you broke up a lot while you were speaking. Is there any way that you could send me an email with the comment that you just read out to Planning Commission, and I can at least make sure they all have it in their inboxes for the record?
I don't know if he's hearing you.
Justin, you're on mute if you're attempting to speak.
Let me, Ms. Harrison, did you have a question?
Yes, I'm having trouble with audio. Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Harrison, did you have a question? You're muted, I think.
I do have a question. So as I was, Mr. Howard, as I was listening to you, I understand you're looking for the mixed use workforce housing component. And I know that we've gone through an additional change on that ordinance to encourage affordable housing. But one of the keywords that you were saying was high end. And I'm just concerned that maybe there's another zoning classification or base zoning classification that would be more appropriate for that, because of the fact that, you know, if we're gonna try and do workforce housing, and I understand we've got the fee in lieu option, but the goal is to accomplish that. And so creating, you know, a variable uses from affordable to workforce to naturally occurring. And so I'm just curious, is that what you kind of envision is more of a high-end product?
Yeah, Ms. Harrison, if it's okay with you, I was going to let him respond to your question, as well as I was going to let the person opposed, the Preservation Society, and then let him respond to both of those and maybe give us some answers, if that's okay with you. So Chloe, do we have, I think that was the only person in favor, Historic Charleston, and there's in opposition, Ms. Minigan. Is she available?
Yes.
Okay, great. You go ahead, ma'am, whenever you're ready.
Yes, thank you so much. Erin Minigan with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society would like to thank the applicant for reaching out to us on this request. We would again reiterate that we stand for the integrity of the height districts as drawn, which were designed to be responsive and compatible with the existing context. Given the Planning Commission is charged with reviewing height districts rezoning based on the compatibility with the surrounding properties, we strongly urge you to deny this request. The immediate context is comprised of primarily 1, 2, and 3-story buildings, and a 6-story building would be completely out of scale with its surroundings. Not to mention, it would allow for the potential of a 7th story through the BAR process. Even the tallest building nearby at the corner of East Bay and Calhoun is only 5 stories, further reinforcing 6 stories is inappropriate for the context. Given the detrimental impact additional height would have on the character of the context, we urge you to recommend disapproval of this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minigan. Mr. Hoffer, would you like to respond? First of all, there's a question by Ms. Harrison. If you can respond to that, as well as anything said by the opposed as well.
Sure. Thank you all. First of all, as far as the workforce housing goes, the city's formula is really structured to be almost a penalty at this point. And so it doesn't really encourage the ability to actually produce the workforce housing that's needed. And so far, most people have paid off the fee and they use it to invest in other projects. It's hard to force a owner to rent or sell something for less than it costs. And so that's really where the rub comes. So the land's very expensive and the construction costs are very expensive. and the process of getting approvals through, whether it's the TRC and the zoning and the BAR and all the other entities, takes a year or two, and it turns out to be an expensive exercise. So the only way to survive a development successfully like this would be to go to a high-end product, which will be larger units and more expensive rent. I can say we have not made a final decision on whether or not to incorporate the workforce housing or some of it. There's a variety of percentages and formulas that could be used. So we could say, okay, we'll do half of what might be normally required, and we'll pay the fee for the other half. So there's a mixture that could occur, and we just don't know that yet until we get the program for the building. I would, I guess, argue against the people who don't want to give us the height. We're not going to ask for a 7th floor through the BAR and architectural merit, even though we may deserve it. We're focused on the 6th floor, and the main reason is because we're going to have 3 levels of parking inside of this building, and you can't get enough space inside the building without an additional floor. We're not next to any really residential houses. We're across the street. We're not in a residential neighborhood. I think there's a lot of things that check the boxes to allow you to grant us that variance. And I think somebody had read the city ordinance, and I've got it down here. I wasn't going to beat a dead horse, but section 54-306 does address the higher heights districts and shall be evaluated on basically the context of the property, the character of the amenity area, and the street widths around this property. So all of those things, I think, lead to your ability to grant that additional floor, and would like to get it. It's possible the project would not be able to proceed forward without that space. So these are, just the issues that we have to resolve before we can proceed forward. So hopefully that answers the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Harford. With that,
Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this is James Wilson. May I just add to that?
Yes, sir.
Just very briefly? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
So the context of the property, of course, is what this board commission looks at and is supposed to look at, as Mr. Harford just explained. And just one couple points I wanted to make on that. One is that even though there are some smaller buildings around, this area is already zoned for 5 stories. And so we've seen a lot of change in Charleston, and that change is continuing. So, please bear in mind that this is a 5-story zone. We've seen some of those buildings come up, and we will see more. I think what's really important here is a question of what's the context, and do we impact a neighborhood? And it's with setting back our 6th floor from East Bay Street. This will not be visible from street level on East Bay Street. This is not something that's going to impact East Bay Street there, or a neighborhood. We're really in an industrial neighborhood. The 6th floor effectively faces the port, and so I think it's important to actually look at that context, not just what currently exists, but what's allowed and is coming. And then also what I would say is that what we're asking for is really quite similar to what the Evening Post was asking for, in that, like Mr. Alford said, we're not asking to be able to come to an additional floor on top of the 6 stories. We just want to have some certainty that we can do that 6-story setback from East Bay Street. And we're happy to, as Mr. Alford already said, commit to that. So please just want to make sure you consider that in the context, and what we're looking for here is just to know what we can do, and again, to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is set back and doesn't impact the neighborhood that's across the street. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Harford. That'll close the public aspect of this application.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering if I could read into, or at least summarize the full comments.
Yeah, if you would
Foundation.
summarize, that's good. I think we got some of it from him, and maybe just missed a little bit. So if you want to summarize, that's fine.
Historic Charleston Foundation is supporting the use rezoning from light industrial to mixed use workforce housing for this item. given the affordable housing crisis Charleston faces, are energized by the workforce housing zoning is being pursued. However, they encourage the development team to contribute workforce housing units versus paying the fee in lieu option. They're also expressing opposition to the height rezoning. So they're in favor of the change in the base zoning and are in opposition to the change in the height district. With the potential to request 7 stories from the BAR for architectural merit, they do not believe it's appropriate for the site. Even though it is located within the urban core, it's not within the spine where the tallest building should be. It's next to 2.5 historic single houses on Charlotte Street, 2 single-story commercial buildings directly across from it, and a 3.5-story building, a 3.5 historic building with 2.5-story dependencies. The tallest building closest to the location is on the corner of Calhoun and East Bay, which is at 5 stories. A 6-story, potentially 7-story building is architecturally insensitive to the surrounding area because of the site's location in adjacency to historic properties in the Mezquite-Ragboro neighborhood. It is appropriately zoned at its current height district of 5 stories, respectfully. The commission asked to reject the height rezoning request for this item.
Thank you, ma'am. So with that, we'll close the public aspect of this. Commission members, I'd like to chime in on this. The whole thing about the workforce housing, again, people have it. It's always concerned me that they have the ability to pay the fee in lieu, but they do. They have that ability. And so I think that's something city council needs to work on to change. But that being said, the fact that they have that, and I heard Ms. Harrison, it's something they can do. I mean, it's part of what they have the ability to do, and the city is I guess, encourage that so they can do other projects. So that being said, I rode by this property several times today and actually walked around at one time with one drizzling. But I don't see, in my opinion, well, that 6th floor, again, if we can limit it like we did the Post and Courier application, I'm going to make a motion to approve this. And then the reason is I heard Ms. Harrison about the workforce, but they have the ability to be a fee in lieu. I think that's something that city council needs to work on. I've talked to Councilmember Appel about that to tighten that up. But in the meantime, I will make a motion to approve this. Other questions, comments? Second?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jacobs, you go ahead.
I'm not going to second your motion because I'm going to take some pages from my colleagues on this commission. Earlier in this meeting, Mr. Lassane said we need to be vigilant. And I think this is a site where we need to be vigilant. Ms. Harrison made some questions about the high-end residential with the fee in lieu. The very purpose of this MU workforce housing was to try to create, through a developer who's better able to do it, workforce housing within a site and only pay fee in lieu if it's just, really necessary or they can't really fit everything in. And I've a lot of concerns about what I heard tonight. I also have concerns about granting them the 6 feet height here. 6-story height here in a 5-story, because this will start a chain along this 5-story area. And I think this is where we're vigilant. So those are my comments. I will not be voting for approval of this.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Other comments, questions?
I'd like to second your motion, Charlie. I agree with everything you said. No need for me to restate it, but I want to go on record being a second.
Great, thank you. So I've made a motion, Ms. Johnson seconded, but we'll take other comments, questions before we.
Well, I have a question for Christopher Morgan. I just always remember Lynn Krawcheck always saying, right pew, wrong church. What is there? I'm looking at our MU, and there's an MU1 and an MU2, and obviously we've got MU workforce housing, because the workforce housing gives other incentives, with regards to parking. So are there still MU1s that don't have the requirement to provide affordable housing?
There are on the ground a few locations with the MU that does not have the WH associated with it. we never recommend for those, because if you get mixed use without the workforce housing, then we get no money or affordable housing units at all. So we get nothing out of it. So that's why, staff is always telling folks that if they want MU, we're only going to recommend if it's the workforce housing, where at least we get the fee in lieu. And again, the fee in lieu has been raised considerably in an effort to encourage developers to put more affordable housing in their projects themselves. But in the absence of putting it in the project itself, it will give us more money to build affordable units that will be permanently affordable units in a context, that we work on with our housing and community development department. So, but we are strongly of the opinion that if we're going to have mixed use, it should be in the workforce housing category.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Ms. Harrison, anything else? Any other comments?
I guess I understand Mr. Hoffer's comments, but in the context of having worked with other folks who've done affordable housing and working on projects that deal with affordable housing, the fee in lieu has been good, but I think the starting point has always, to me, been let's try and figure it out. And I guess that's where I struggle, is that, yeah, we get some fees out of it, but in downtown, we know that it's almost an impossibility to really find those unique opportunities, and any opportunity that we can do to really exercise a workforce housing and really, push people to do it is, and I feel as though this is again, right pew, wrong church. And if there's just another base zoning that gets him exactly what he wants, I have no problem with it. And I don't actually have a problem with the height change. And I think that's a little bit of my struggle.
I hear you, Ms. Harris.
Supporting your motion.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think, and again, to me, that whole mixed use workforce housing needs to be looked at by the city, how they can tighten it up, because right now people have the right to do this. And that's the reason I made that motion, but I understand. Any other comments, questions?
Well, I just want to go, I want to reiterate what you said, and Ms. Harrison, I agree with what you're saying, but if they go with another zoning category, we don't even get the fee, then we don't get the funds. So I think it's something that they have the right to do. It's they have the right to pay the fee in lieu of providing the workforce housing. So I think this is the best of all worlds, rather than trying to change the zoning to something where we wouldn't get a fee.
And I think Mr. Hoffer did say, I think, if I recall, that they hadn't really decided that they may do somewhat of that, but I don't know. Again, it wasn't clear. So other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, I guess, of you, since you made the motion. Both Mr. Wilson and Mr. Hofford in their presentations mentioned that the building that they're seeking to build would be 6 stories, but not on East Bay Street. They would step back the height from a lower height along East Bay, and then it would be taller as you move towards Washington Street. And I wonder if it might be more palatable to some of those on the commission who are uneasy about the additional height. I don't have any problem with the mixed use workforce housing zoning, but whether we step the height district back from East Bay Street some distance so that we protect the 5 stories on East Bay. So that's, I guess, a question for you and perhaps for staff.
Yeah, and I'd ask Mr. Morgan to help me clarify that, to see how we would word that. I'm fine. I understand what you're saying. Mr. Morgan?
I mean, you could ask the applicant if they'd be willing to, have the application amended to back the height district up 25 feet from, the East Bay right of way, because that would be a reduction in what they are requesting. In other words, it wouldn't be the entirety of the building footprint or the parcel footprint. We could, back it up 25 feet. I mean, that's a little bit unusual, but, I think if there is consensus with the commission, you could certainly make that recommendation.
Would that, Mr. Lassane, would that?
Yeah, and I know that there's the analogy already been drawn to what we did earlier tonight or this afternoon on King Street. And in that case, the applicant was asking for a lower height limit than the highest height limit that they sought further into the block, but along the street they sought a lower limit. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve. So I think Mr. Hofford has his hand raised.
I would be happy to accept a restriction of a setback of 25 to 30 feet off of East Bay Street for the granting of the 6th floor. So we'd stick it 5 floors along East Bay and then kick it back 25 feet for the next level.
Okay. I'd like my motion to reflect that. I'd like my motion to reflect that, and I'll keep as maker of the motion with that in mind and reflected on what the comments of the applicant said that they would do that. Ms. Johnson, you still okay on seconding that?
I am.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments? Mr. Lassane, thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other questions, comments of commission members? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. There's a motion that I made, second by Ms. Johnson, with the proviso of the application being changed to specify that height as per Mr. Morgan and the applicant accepting that.
Charlie, may I have a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is for Christopher. As y'all know what I said earlier, I think this is a little different than the Evening Post, and that we were able to see architecturally what is being done, which was a huge part of the decision. And I think the world of everything that Hank Hofford has done and continues to do. My concern is that we increase that height. And you're looking at it from the water side, and you're looking at it from East Bay Street. And it makes me nervous that we're setting a precedent for the balance of the properties going further down. I mean, I grew up on Charlotte Street. I'm very familiar with that area. And I'm nervous about the height. Stepping it back does help. I know that we have to put parking underneath, and I know the expenses associated with building anything in downtown Charleston or anywhere. I think that we do need to look. I hate getting the fee in lieu of, because we are affording nobody housing, either affordably or even in workforce housing. And I hope, and I don't know if we can, make a recommendation that we do, that maybe there is no fee in lieu of, or half a fee in lieu of. We are not helping the housing situation in downtown Charleston that we just spent so much time on our 10-year plan with a fee in lieu of. As Erica said, a fee in lieu of doesn't help when you can't find land and you can't buy property to build workforce and affordable housing. So my question to you is, can we put that in our recommendation that it is so affordable? I know Hank mentioned that he would consider it. But we don't even have a plan to look at right now to see about its architectural content. I definitely don't want it to be able to get to 7 feet, and I'm really having an issue with the 6 foot, 6'5". But if we can get these compromises, then I would possibly consider voting for it.
Thank you, Ms. Lepsis. And Mr. Morgan, I'll let you answer, but as I said, this thing has continued to bother me, this fee in lieu. And I know I've talked to Councilmember Appel about this, and I think we really need to, if it sounds like we're on the same page, maybe do a letter to City Council asking them to modify that so it is tighter and tougher. Christopher, you correct me if I'm wrong. This whole thing of fee in lieu, that we want to have affordable housing. We don't want to be out with the fee in lieu. We want to tighten that up so that there is more affordable or workforce housing, because again, most people, as I understand, are paying the fee in lieu, and they have the right to do that. So I can't fault anybody for doing that. I don't think we have the ability I guess Ms. Lampus is asking, Christopher, I don't think we have the ability to say we'll approve it, but they have to do workforce housing. I don't know if that's Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, we can't condition these categories. You know, if it was a PUD or something like that, there could be conditions on it, but absent the PUD situation, we can't really condition it. Now, what we have talked about is your motion, which is amending the application to say that it's only going to apply for, 25 feet in to the site for the height going up to 6 feet. That's an amendment of the application essentially that you're recommending. So that's a little bit different, but we can't really get into the kind of inner workings of how the affordable housing works, the MUWH affordable housing. But I will say, staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it in the last 18 months that the city did, greatly upgrade the fee in lieu to a much higher fee in lieu schedule and scale that really does encourage more on the site of the affordable housing. But, it still may make more financial sense in the context of individual development decisions to pay that fee in lieu, but we are going to be getting a good bit more money out of it. And, I'm sure it will lead to construction of other affordable units. I mean, that's what we've been using the fee in lieu. We've gotten millions and millions in fee in lieu already off other affordable housing developments around town. We've been doing a lot in Ashleyville, Maryville. The city is working to buy lots of other land in areas around downtown to create, more affordable housing. And we're also working very hard with the housing authority on the properties that they own, getting more density on those and greater improvements to the conditions of the housing that folks are living in there.
So that fee in lieu is helping because it's bringing in the money, but maybe I'll ask Mr. Lassane as vice chairman to help me, after, obviously not on this application, how do we tackle the problem with city council to try to tighten this up or whatever, and maybe he can have some insight on that.
Yeah, I think one thing that would help, and Mr. Morgan just mentioned that recently we passed an ordinance amendment and city council passed a substantial raising of the fee in the fee in lieu program. And I wonder if the Department of Housing and Community Development could get us a report that shows how much the fee in lieu program has generated and how that's been used. Perhaps that'll help the commission feel better about this option. And I don't disagree that this is something that the city ought to be continuing to look at. If y'all remember when we passed the fee in lieu option several years ago, the commitment was that we would continue to revisit it to make sure it's working. We've obviously revisited it once already, and I think it's certainly appropriate to continue to do that. So, Mr. Morgan, if you could do that, I think that might help. And I'm going to come back to, while I have the floor, I'm going to come back to the height question on this rezoning. And I want to state for the record and reinforce what I heard Mr. Hofford and Mr. Wilson say. Under the current zoning, they can seek a 6-story on architectural merit. And that is, of course, the option, the purview of the BAR to opt to issue that or not. And what they've told us is that they will not seek that additional story if we grant them the 6 stories that they've requested. So I want that to be in the record. And that actually plays a big part in my willingness to support the application. So
thank you. I hear you, Mr. Lassane. I think we had Mr. Wilson and Mr. Hofford both say they were in agreement to that.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. So other questions, comments? I made a motion, second by Ms. Johnson. If there's no other questions or comments, we're gonna do a roll call vote.
Charlie, can we divide your motion? Can I make a motion to divide the question on the issue of height and MU?
Yes, ma'am. I think you can make a motion to that. Is there, I guess what you want to do is divide those two options. You want to approve it one way and maybe not for both. Is that correct?
Well, I probably would abstain because, I have some, I understand the fee in lieu.
Let me say this. I think we could do that, but I think what we need to do, since there's a motion on the floor, and then if it passes, if it doesn't pass, you obviously can make another motion, which would maybe accomplish what you're trying to do. I'm not sure, but there's a motion on the floor. And I think we ought to vote on the motion as going forward, and then see how we stand then.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do believe that according to Robert's rules, you do have to vote on the motion that's been seconded on the floor before you can entertain another motion.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Twain.
But
So,
Mr. Karish, I also think, and Harry, that didn't you second this motion?
no, Ms.
I didn't
Johnson,
second this motion.
Ms. Johnson seconded the motion.
Okay, all right. Because
I was making a motion to divide the motion.
we could amend the motion possibly.
Well, I could, but as maker of the motion, I'm gonna leave it as is for now and see where the wind blows, I think, to see where we're going with this. So there's a motion on the floor that I made, seconded by Ms. Johnson. I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Ms. Harrison?
I'm going to abstain on this one.
Okay, so abstention. Ms. Jacobs?
No, not in favor.
Okay, Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson? You with us?
I in favor. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Lempesis?
I want to abstain as well.
Okay. Mr. Lassane?
Aye, in favor.
Great, and I'm in favor. So I need a little clarification. There's a parliamentarian, so there's 6 votes. There's 3 in favor, 2 abstentions, and 1 negative vote. I would think that that's a positive vote because the 2 abstentions didn't vote against. Mr. Lassane, can you help me with this? Or Mr. Morgan, I think there would be 3 to 1 and 2 abstentions is the way it would read.
You're correct, Charlie. The motion passes.
Okay, so,
Motion passes.
okay, so 3, okay, thank you. So thank you for that.
Motion does pass.
Yeah, so,
Majority voted in favor, so.
yeah, so there's 3 in favor, myself, Ms. Johnson, and Mr. Lassane, just for the record. Ms. Jacobs is against, and there's 2 abstentions, Ms. Harrison and Ms. Lempesis, so it passes by 3 to 1. Little interesting comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to encourage both you and Mr. Lassane to write that letter to City Council, because this site was a perfect site for really affordable housing to be built and not have a fee in lieu paid. This is walkable to so many businesses downtown. And yes, we are building affordable housing in Maryville, but if you work downtown, you still have to transport downtown somehow, and that's not convenient right now. So I would strongly encourage us to do exactly what y'all were talking about in this thing, to relook at the zoning and maybe make a hard percentage of affordable housing, and then after that a fee in lieu, so we at least get something on site for every one of these MU workforce housing. Like, say, 5% has to be, and if you qualify for 20%, then you could pay the other 15% in fee in lieu if you chose to. But I really think we need to encourage council to quickly look at this, because this is going to roll in very quick, especially along this corridor right here, which is a perfect walkable corridor for people who work downtown to have affordable housing. Thank you for the time.
I hear you, Ms. Jacobs, and I agree with you. And then Mr. Lassane, you go ahead, but I think me and Mr. Lassane need to work with Christopher to see how many people take the fee in lieu, but also to push City Council. Go ahead, Mr. Lassane.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest is, and I agree with everything that my fellow commissioners have said about this. And I think we have an upcoming workshop with City Council with this commission. And I really think this ought to be top of the agenda for this commission to bring up with council when we discuss the city plan.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%, because, as long as that option's out there, people have the right to do it. And I'm glad it's bringing in money, but maybe not to the areas like Ms. Jacobs said that we need them the most. So it's a problem that we need to try to help solve. Thank you.
And then the other piece too is, if what Mr. Hofford is saying is that the cost of development is too expensive, then we really need to think about how we do our incentives-based zoning, because it isn't just the density, it is the process. The process is so hard to get the affordable housing.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. So that's something. Go
Charlie,
ahead.
I would like to say that the process it is expensive in and of itself with materials, land, et cetera, but it also is expensive because the entitlement process takes so long within the city in order to enact this, which is one of the issues that we have talked about. And if it didn't take, as Mr. Hofford mentioned, a year to 2 years to get an approval process through, then it would not be as expensive. So I would like that to be another point of our discussion with City Council in order to move it forward faster and give, if we give approval, it doesn't need to take 2 years for it to get completed. So that's one of my suggestions.
Thank you, Cindy. And that makes a lot of sense. And Mr. Morgan, make a note of both of those. I think we're right on with both of those. They tie into each other. So thank you. The next, that finishes the rezonings. We're now in the order.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We're in the ordinance amendments. Number one, an ordinance to amend section 54-213 sidewalk cafe regulations of chapter 54 of the code of the city of Charleston zoning ordinance to make changes, including reducing the sidewalk width and clear pedestrian path width requirements. Is Mr. Batchelder going to be doing this?
Yes.
Thank you, Lee. You go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Members of the Planning Commission, back in 2004, the city adopted the first set of rules allowing sidewalk cafes. And since then, we've issued 44 permits for sidewalk cafes in the city of Charleston. 36 of those are on the peninsula, 8 are on Daniel Island. And with the recent, with this current COVID situation going on and restaurants struggling and emergency dining provisions being enacted by City Council to allow some flexibility for more outside dining than would otherwise be permissible, the mayor asked us to go back and look at the current set of rules for permanent sidewalk cafes. And so we went back and looked at those, and the amendments that you see on this proposed ordinance are pretty minor. They just alter a few things with regard to the minimum sidewalk width requirements that qualify for sidewalk cafes and the minimum clear pedestrian path widths that are required under certain circumstances. And pretty straightforward stuff. This was reviewed internally by a number of people, including the fire marshal. And so we've come up with what we think is a reasonable way of allowing a few more sidewalk cafes in certain areas where we do have sidewalks that are suitable for that. Still wouldn't allow them on most areas along King Street because sidewalks along King Street are just too narrow with the amount of pedestrian traffic we have. And so, this doesn't allow them everywhere by any means, but it does create a few more opportunities. For instance, one being the sidewalks in front of Hyman's Deli and Aaron's Deli, Hyman Seafood over there in that block. Those are wide sidewalks, but they have no on-street parking or loading zones adjacent to the curb on that side. And so the current rules prohibit sidewalk cafes on those sidewalks. These rules would allow them to keep a sidewalk cafe in front of their business when the emergency provisions expire. So we hope that you'll recommend for this and we can take it to City Council. But I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelder. And so is there anyone, well, I don't know if I read this, let me look, signed up to speak on this? I believe, no, I guess there isn't anyone to sign up to speak on this. Is that correct? No written comments?
That's correct.
Great. Okay, so that'll close the public aspect of this, and I'd ask commission members if they have any questions, comments, or motion.
I'd like to move for approval. I think we're going to see a shift in dining in general, even post-pandemic and for post the emergency allowance of this. So I'd like to move for approval.
Great, thank you, Ms. Johnson. There's a motion by Ms. Johnson. to
I'll
approve.
second Ms. Johnson's motion and echo what she said. I believe this is going to be a movement. People like to sit outside and we have beautiful weather.
Yep. So there's a motion by Ms. Johnson and second by Ms. Jacobs. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs?
Aye in favor.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye in favor.
Great. Ms. Lampasas?
Aye in favor.
Great. Mr. Lassane?
Aye. Aye in favor.
Thank you. And I'm in favor as well. So that's 6 in favor and none opposed. The first subdivision is deferred. That was Central Park Road. The second subdivision is Daniel Park Drive, parcel K, Daniel Island, TMS number 2750000. Is there another zero? I think so. 086, 160, and 185, approximately 36.9 acres. Request approval of subdivision concept plan consisting of public right-of-ways and related infrastructure for proposed mixed-use development, zone Daniel Island, general office, D1GO. Who's Mr. Morgan, Ms. Harp? Who's going to be talking about this?
It's me. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Harp. You go ahead.
Okay, this is Daniel Island Drive, as you stated. It's this parcel K. And this one is a little different than what you're used to because it's not necessarily a residential subdivision. It has to come to Planning Commission as they are trying to create a new public right of way, and they are creating 5 lots or more. So that is what they're doing with the 36.9 acres. This is you're probably familiar with this parcel, which is where the soccer stadium was located in the Molish. It is zone DIGO. The DIGO zoning allows for single family detached, attached residential units, multifamily residential, office and retail uses. As you can see, the surrounding areas, there's a couple of offices in there, but it's mostly marsh and it is zone conservation. So as I explained to you, this comes to you because it is the number of lots that they are subdividing. And the concept plan is for what they're trying to do in the future. So this is shows the right of way in the center. And if you go to the next slide, please. There you go. That shows what is proposed. There's going to be a multifamily building, and there are like a couple buildings in there. The existing office building will remain. There's a park, as is required per Daniel Island Master Plan. There is a new pump station that's going to be relocated. And to the left of the plan, you see a future proposed single family or retail phase. So what they're dividing this in, subdividing into 8 lots with the creation of the new right-of-way. All the single family, proposed single family that is shown in there, it is in the future. So you will see that as a concept plan. Not now, that is not what they're asking for. Right now, they're just asking for the subdivision of the 2 parcels into 8. And like I said, it is for multifamily, for the office building, the park, proposed offices and parking in the front. And so each one is a parcel on its own, and because it is the number of parcel, it has to come to Planning Commission. After, if you grant the approval, the next step for the applicant is to submit to TRC for road construction plans. And that is when the normal review process will take place for the road and for the proposed road, and the parcel in the rear that is like the orangey, peachy color, it is supposed to be a multifamily, and that one will go through TRC as well. Anything that happens in the existing building will be reviewed as a building commercial, like a building permit. And anything additional will have to come to you for anything, any residential subdivision for the future. But based on that, the staff recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, Ms. Harp. Who will be presenting, Chloe? I see several people listed. Whoever it is, if you can promote them, and we'll hear from them now.
Okay, the applicants are joining now as panelists. And when the applicants join, if you can please share your video.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. You'll go ahead whenever you're ready and just identify yourself if you would. You're with me?
Hi, this is Gary Collins with Seaman Whiteside. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Gary Collins. I'm a managing principal at Seaman Whiteside, and we are working with the client on the concept plan submittal. And I wanted to give a add-on to Anna to just give you a little bit of understanding of what the background was with this site and why we were submitting the concept plan. As you know, the original site was the existing Blackbaud building that is going to remain as part of the plan that's down in the bottom right. And the stadium was demolished. In discussing how we would move forward with the subdivision of this property, we understood through the ordinance that we needed to have the public right-of-way besides Daniel Island Drive in order to subdivide these lots off of that, as well as the need to come to concept plan if we wanted to do 5 or more lots. And so what we created was a public right-of-way that you see in sort of a red or in the plan that we're showing right now is the public right-of-way that we would be able to then subdivide future lots off of. The goal is to create a mixed-use development that is allowed under the Daniel Island General Office zoning. Right now, we do have a multifamily user in the middle. They're planning to renovate the existing office building to update that facility, but it will remain. And also as part of the Daniel Island PUD, there is a requirement to create a focal point park. So some of that is along the alley of trees that exist in the middle of the public right-of-way, and then connects to the bottom left where there will be open space in a park that connects to an actual dock that goes out to Knoll Creek. So that allowed us to then create the park and be consistent with the requirements of the Daniel Island PUD. So again, what Anna had mentioned, this is in order to move forward with the subdivision that is required under the ordinance and the city's requirements to subdivide more than 5 lots. So at this point, that's all we're requesting. And like she said, we will be coming forward, or the group will be coming forward with future developments. The single family has been identified, but is not something that has been decided on or contracted yet. And there is a potential to do some limited retail on this to give it a true mixed use component to this project. So I think that's in general background. We wanted to just explain what we were doing with this submittal today. And if we're here for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. We appreciate that. There's no one signed up to speak in favor or opposed to this. So that will close the public aspect of this. I'd ask commission members if there's questions, comments, or a motion.
I'll move for approval.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson moves for approval.
I'll second the motion.
Is that Ms. Harrison? Thank you. So Ms. Johnson moves for approval. Ms. Harrison seconds. If there's no comments or questions, I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs?
Aye, in favor.
Thanks. Ms. Johnson?
Aye, in favor.
Great. Ms. Lymphosis?
Aye, in favor.
Mr. Hussein? Mr. Hussein?
Aye, in favor.
Thank you. And I'm in favor. That's 6 in favor and none opposed. There's one more item on the agenda and then the minutes. Zonings 2029 Ashley River Road, Trophy Woods, West Ashley, TMS number 35102000034, approximately 0.24 acres, request zoning of single family residential SR1. It was zoned Ashley River Corridor Overlay District, ODARRC, CC, and single family residential in Charleston County. Mr. Morgan, you will be talking about this?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And, this is a property that typically with the R4 in the county, we bring those in at SR1, and it is a quarter acre lot. So that more than meets the minimum acreage requirements of SR1. And that is our recommendation is SR1 for the property.
Thanks. And no one has signed up to speak on this. Questions or comments or motion from commission members?
Mr. Chairman, pleased to welcome another resident into the city of Charleston, and I will move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Lassine.
And I'll second Mr. Lassane's motion.
And Ms. Jacobs likes that other resident too. So we got a motion by Mr. Lassane, second by Ms. Jacobs. I'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Harrison?
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs?
I in favor.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye, in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Lampasas?
I in favor.
Thanks. Mr. Lassane?
Aye, in favor.
And I'm in favor. That's 6 in favor, none opposed. The last item was originally the first item, and I put it off till the end as minutes. I hope you all had a chance to review these minutes. I think Ms. Jacobs commented with some changes. One of them was, I think they list her as Mr. Jacobs, and she's kind of tough at times, but I don't think she's a Mr. Jacobs. So, and I had a couple of little small things just on the introduction and stuff like that. Is any other questions, comments, or can we get a motion to approve all of these minutes?
I'll move to approve them with the corrections that I gave and you submitted, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. So Ms. Jacobs makes a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion because I trust Ms. Jacobs.
No, I do too. If she read them, I guarantee they're right. But so if she spotted in all those minutes, one time they put Mr. Jacobs, she spotted that right off the bat, I promise. But anyway, there's a motion by Ms. Jacobs, not Mr. Jacobs, Ms. Jacobs, and second by Ms. Lampasas. We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Harrison? Miss, you okay? I think you're muted, so you okay?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
In favor.
Ms.
Yes.
Jacobs?
I in favor. And Mr. Chairman, I failed to acknowledge the hard work of staff to get those minutes to us. That was a lot of work. And I also realized in our Dropbox, there's a whole nother set that wasn't presented at this meeting. So kudos to staff in face of all this for getting those to us. And I failed to mention that.
Thank you, Miss, and I echo those thoughts. Ms. Johnson?
Aye, in favor.
Great. Ms. Lampasas?
I in favor.
Mr. Lassane?
Aye, in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. So that's 6 in favor and none opposed. I would like in the line with the minutes, it's my understanding that we all call her Marcy Grant. She's been the planning clerk since 1984. Today is her last meeting serving as clerk for Planning Commission. And I hope y'all will join me in that. I tell you, Ms. Lampasas goes back further than me, but Marcy is really a wonderful, just not a good clerk, but she's a wonderful person, anybody that knows her. So I think she's with us still. Hopefully she's here, and I know I'm going to miss you. Anybody else?
Marcy, I cannot tell you how disappointed I am to hear that about you. We go back even further than the many years I've been on this commission. We go back to schools, to middle
She went to
school.
Middleton High School?
Marcy was at St. Andrews or Middleton. Anyways, we go back to that far.
Okay.
So honestly, Marcy, congratulations on your retirement. You deserve it and you earned it. Good luck to you, and please keep in touch with us.
Yes.
And,
I can only give virtual hugs.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lassane, you go ahead.
Yeah, and I want to second what Ms. Lampasas said. I had the opportunity to work as a colleague with Marcy, and she's a wonderful person and a wonderful colleague. Can I make a motion that we pass a resolution of thanks for all of her many years of service to the commission and the city of Charleston?
Yeah, would you like, make a motion to that? Yeah.
Happily second that motion.
Great, Ms. Jacobs seconded it. We'll do a still.
And I'll third that motion.
Okay, good. I think if anybody opposed, I don't think there is. And if we can come up with something, we certainly should. But I'd also like to, and I know she's probably hearing this, but I don't know, I'd like to get her something as well. So I'll talk to y'all. I'll send y'all an email on that after the meeting. Because Marcy is just, as Mr. Lassane said, not just a good clerk, but she's just a wonderful person. I run into her when we're out eating and stuff like that, and she's just a wonderful person. So,
Mr. Chair, I did want to clarify, and Marcy, you can have me to
I'm
to
sorry.
blame for all of this publicity, but I just wanted to clarify, she's not retiring from the city. She's just retiring from her role with Planning Commission.
She's had enough of us.
She's had enough of us. She'll be serving other boards. And so I just wanted to make that clarification that she'll still be at the city for the time being.
So now we can say we feel abandoned. And Marcy, I'm going to miss you. This is Angie. You've been my seatmate for what, 14, 15 years. Wish I could have seen you in person, but just wish you all the best and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, and thank you for being with us. I know you were on the run, but thank you for your effort to be with us today.
Sure thing. Never a dull moment.
And anybody else? Well, thank you. And
I do have a quick.
go ahead.
I had a question for Christopher, because I know we were supposed to have our workshop with council, and I know that part of our plan included, reference to the Racial Equity Commission, and what's the status of that? Because if our plan is supposedly referencing it, how will we incorporate that if it's not even approved or where it stands right now?
I think we referenced the report that they came up with, and so how that report is implemented within the city organization, and does that committee continue to exist or not? Those are kind of a little bit beyond our plan, but I think we're referencing, Chloe, if I'm misstating that, aren't we referencing more the report as opposed to any kind of further comments from the commission or whatever, right?
I think currently the recommendation in the city plan is to implement recommendations in the report. I think that's the language right now.
Yeah, I was just concerned that we wouldn't be able to, we would have to revise that portion.
But the city has formally accepted the report, correct?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah, I'm not clear on what the final action was from last night. And what its implications are in reference to those recommendations.
Well, the language in the plan recommendation is not contingent on whether the report was officially accepted by city council or not. So that's something that maybe you all can discuss with city council, how you would like to handle that. But there's nothing current. It could remain as is and still be legitimate. It just depends on how city council wants to handle that recommendation.
Okay, thank you all and for your comments and your work. And also thank you again for meeting a little bit early, because we did go almost 3 hours, and I got synagogue at 6:30, so that makes it so I can go to that. So thank you all for that.
Hey, Charlie, we expect you to atone for all of your bad things.
And
that's why
and ours too. Don't forget us.
No, I'll pray for everybody. But Chloe had told me about this meeting early, and I think she was concerned my sins, that I'd go to synagogue and make sure I repented for them. We actually fast. It's interesting. Yom Kippur is a fast holiday, so I won't eat and drink from sundown tonight to sundown tomorrow night, and so it's kind of a cleansing period. And the rabbis say it's not supposed to be miserable and all that. It's supposed to be happy. I don't know how you're supposed to be happy, but I'll try to be happy while I'm starving and thirsty. But
happy and hungry,
and praying the whole time. There's nothing like it. Nothing like being in a room with I can say this, y'all can't, with a couple of hundred other Jews that hadn't eaten and drinking, so they're pretty all miserable together. All right, well, y'all have a good evening, and thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Good night.